multimedia designers work within two-dimensional space. You work on a computer, and the display screen on your computer has two dimensions. It has width and it has height. And for the most part, unless you're working in the area of 3D animation, most of what you create for web pages and for just simple digital media production is going to be along the lines of two-dimensional graphics. It's really sort of the bread and butter of what we work with. So I just want to explain this really quickly to you. I'm going to jump over to Photoshop because, again, this is probably the easiest program to work in terms of trying to communicate the basics of graphic design. Well, here we are, and I have an image here that I've created, and I need to introduce to you the concept of a pixel. A pixel is a picture element, and it is the foundational building block of digital images within multimedia production. I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. The topic of pixels gets discussed in a lot more detail in Chapter 8 dealing with graphics. But for right now, I just want to show you very quickly that the image you see on the screen in front of you is constructed of pixels. And to do that, I'm going to zoom in, holding down my Command and plus key on the keyboard. And I'm going to zoom in to the text until we can actually see the pixels making up this image. And if I come down, you can see that over here in the number 6, the number is actually formed with little tiny squares, and each square has a single color. And this is foundational to understanding how digital images are created in programs like Photoshop. And thus everything you see and that you create in a digital application like Photoshop, even when you're creating curves, they're created with little rectangular units that are perfectly square called pixels. So if I zoom back out, we can look at the ruler across the top of the screen. You can see that the unit of measurement I currently have selected are pixels. And if I right click on this, one of the things that I can do in Photoshop is I can work in any number of different units of measurement, like inches that have physical dimensionality to them, or centimeters, or millimeters, points, picas, and percent. I can choose any of these. For the most part, I want my ruler to be in pixels. This is pretty much where I live and breathe every day when I'm designing. But just to show you what this looks like, if I change it to inches, the actual size of my image doesn't change, but the way that it is dimensionalized within Photoshop changes. It now refers to the image in inches as opposed to pixels. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go back to pixels. So when we refer to the physical space of a digital graphic or image, we typically refer to it with the width dimension stated first, followed by the height. So this image is 800 pixels wide by 600 pixels high. Thus we would call it an 800 by 600 pixel image. Along the horizontal dimension, the width, this is the x-axis. So you'll often refer to, or hear referred to, digital images as having xy coordinates. The x coordinates are along the horizontal or width of the object, followed by the y-axis, which refers to really the vertical dimensionality of a two-dimensional object. So x is the horizontal dimension, y is the vertical dimension. If we were working within a three-dimensional virtual space, we would use z to define the axis of depth that sort of goes off into infinity from the center of the screen. Well, really quickly moving on, I've created a number of different shaped objects within Photoshop just to show you that the pixels that define the image also determine its aspect ratio. This is a 728 by 90 pixel image. It's very horizontal. This would be a great dimension or to use if I was creating a banner ad or a banner graphic for the top of a web page or for an advertisement. I work a lot in video, and so what I end up dealing with a lot of times is I'm creating title graphics for video projects. And in the not too distant past, we worked with standard definition DV video, the dimensions of which were 720 by 480. So this is a TV graphic that would fit within the window of a nonlinear editing program like Final Cut Pro, Avid, or Premiere if I was working with standard definition television, which had that familiar, sort of 4:3 aspect ratio. Well, today most of us are a little bit more accustomed to high definition video. Make this screen go away. And high definition video is has a much wider aspect ratio. It is 16 by 9, which means 16 units across by 9 units high. So the last thing I want to show you is I'm going to jump over to my Safari web browser, and I want to show you what these images will actually look like if I were to, say, post them to the web. And just to give you an idea of how this works, I have to get a reminder here of what my resolution is currently set to on my computer. So here on my my MacBook Pro, I have the resolution of my monitor currently set to 1920 pixels by 1200 pixels high. This is the native resolution. This is the actual number of pixels, points of light on my display screen. And so it's always a good idea to sort of keep your monitor set at the highest resolution that it's capable of. This is the true resolution. So whatever I create in Photoshop is going to appear on my screen pixel by pixel. So just keep this number in mind, that currently I'm set to 1920 by 1200. So if I go over to my 800 by 600 pixel image, okay, you can see it's a little bit bigger. It consumes a little bit more space within my window. If I go to my NTSC video window, it's 720 by 480, so the graphic is starting to grow out a little bit to consume more space within the native resolution of my monitor. And then finally, if I go to my high definition video, my 1920 by 1080, it takes up almost the entire viewable space of my computer screen that you're seeing here. There's just a little bit more space down here at the bottom because if you remember, my resolution is set to 1920 by 1200. So I have a little bit more room down here at the bottom, making up for those 1080 pixels of information. So it's very important as a designer that you keep in mind what the actual distributable format of your graphics is going to be. If you're creating for the web or if you're creating for TV, then you need to think in terms of how many pixels does this image need to be so that I can create it at the right size. And just to make this one final point to you, if I go over here to the Focal Press homepage, here's an actual web page. And you can see there's this little graphic over here about how visitors to the site can save money. If I right click on that and I choose open this image in a new tab, you will see that this is a really small image. It appears in a very, very small amount of space. Now I can't tell by looking at this how big it actually is, but if I right click on it and I choose copy image and I jump over to Photoshop and I choose file new, it automatically is going to size this document for the image that's currently saved in the clipboard. And if I choose OK and paste it, there's my image. Here I can see that this is a 200 pixel wide by 138 pixel high image. It was created for that website to fit within the design space of that particular page. So if we go back to this, we can see that the designer is very purposeful in creating that image to fit within this right sidebar so that it would consume the proper amount of space. So this is just a brief introduction to digital workspaces. Remember that they have two dimensions. The x-axis refers to the horizontal dimension of width and the y-axis refers to the vertical dimension of height. And as a designer, you have to continually be conscious of how large the images that you create are and what the actual distribution medium is going to be for that image, and that will help you to keep the size of your image at an appropriate dimensionality for whatever type of project you're creating.